The moving truck pulled away just as the sun was setting, leaving Jennifer standing in front of her new house with boxes stacked everywhere. Her 7-year-old daughter Lucy was already exploring the backyard, her excited squeals carrying through the quiet suburban street. After 2 years of apartment living following the divorce, Jennifer finally had a place with a yard, good schools nearby, and neighbors who seemed friendly enough when she'd visited before signing the papers. She was exhausted but happy. Teaching second grade was rewarding, but it didn't pay much, and this house had stretched her budget to its limit. Still, watching Lucy run around with pure joy made every penny worth it. Jennifer grabbed another box and headed inside, already planning where the furniture would go. The next morning, she woke up early to start unpacking. She'd just carried out some flattened boxes to the curb when a man appeared at the end of her driveway. He was probably in his late 50s, wearing pressed khakis and a polo shirt that looked like it had been ironed. His hair was perfectly combed, and he had the kind of stern expression that reminded Jennifer of a principal she'd once worked with. "Good morning," Jennifer said, trying to sound friendly despite being covered in dust and wearing her oldest t-shirt. The man didn't smile back. "Those boxes need to be broken down completely flat and tied with string. HOA regulations, page 47. Trash pickup isn't until Thursday, so you'll need to store them in your garage until then." Jennifer blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I just moved in yesterday and—" "Ignorance of the rules isn't an excuse," he interrupted. "I'm Robert Mitchell. I've lived here for 15 years and serve on the HOA board. We maintain standards in this neighborhood, which is why property values stay high. I assume you want to keep your investment secure?" "Of course," Jennifer said, feeling her cheeks flush. "I'll take care of the boxes right away." Robert's eyes scanned her front yard. "Your mailbox needs to be repainted. Forest green, number 427 in the Benjamin Moore catalog. That's the approved color. And those flower pots on your porch need to be terracotta only. No glazed ceramics. You have 30 days to comply." Jennifer looked at her mailbox. The paint was slightly faded, sure, but it looked fine to her. The flower pots were a cheerful blue that Lucy had picked out at the garden center. "I didn't see anything about that in the papers I signed. It's all in the HOA handbook. You should have received one from your realtor." Robert pulled out his phone and tapped something. "I'm making a note of these violations. First offense is a warning. Second offense is a $50 fine. Third offense, we can place a lien on your property." He walked away before Jennifer could respond, leaving her standing there with her mouth open. Welcome to the neighborhood, she thought bitterly. Over the next week, Jennifer tried to settle in while staying on Robert's good side. She repainted the mailbox even though it cost her $60 she hadn't budgeted for. She replaced the flower pots, which made Lucy cry because she'd loved those blue ones. She made sure her trash cans were hidden behind the house except on pickup days. And she kept her grass trimmed to exactly 2.5 inches, just like the rules stated. But it wasn't enough. Robert appeared every few days with a new complaint. Her garden hose was visible from the street. Her car was parked 3 inches over the edge of her driveway. Lucy's chalk drawings on the sidewalk were defacing common property. Each time Jennifer apologized and fixed whatever he'd pointed out. She couldn't afford problems or fines, not with her tight budget. The other neighbors started to notice. Mrs. Patterson from across the street, a sweet older woman with white hair and kind eyes, caught Jennifer outside one afternoon. "Don't let Robert get to you, dear," she said quietly, glancing around as if worried he might hear. "He's like this with everyone, especially new people." "Has he always been this way?" Jennifer asked. Mrs. Patterson nodded sadly. "My husband and I moved here 12 years ago. Robert filed 3 complaints against us in our first month. He got the Johnsons fined $500 over a fence that was 2 inches too tall. The young couple down the street, the Lees, he made their lives so miserable they moved out after just 1 year. Why doesn't anyone stop him?"
"He knows every rule in that handbook better than anyone."
"He's taken 2 families to court and won both times. Most of us just try to stay out of his way." Mrs. Patterson patted Jennifer's arm. "I'm sorry, dear. I wish I could say it gets better." That evening, Jennifer sat on her porch after putting Lucy to bed. She watched the sunset and thought about the life she'd left behind. Before Lucy was born, before the marriage that fell apart, before she became a teacher, Jennifer had spent 10 years of her life in a dojo. She'd earned her 3rd-degree black belt in Shotokan karate at 28. She'd competed in national tournaments, taught advanced classes, and could break boards with her bare hands. But that part of her life felt like it belonged to someone else now. She'd quit karate when Lucy was born, wanting to focus on being a mom. After the divorce, she'd needed stability and peace, not competition and confrontation. She'd packed away her gi and her belts and her trophies, and she hadn't looked back. Now, sitting on this porch in this new neighborhood, Jennifer felt her jaw tighten as she remembered Robert's condescending tone. Her hands formed fists without her meaning to, old muscle memory surfacing. She could still feel the movements, the stances, the controlled power. But no, that wasn't who she was anymore. She was a teacher, a mother, someone who solved problems with patience and kindness. She took a deep breath and relaxed her hands. She'd find a way to handle Robert Mitchell without conflict. She had to. 2 months had passed since Jennifer moved in, and things had only gotten worse. Robert seemed to have made it his personal mission to find fault with everything she did. Last week, he'd left a violation notice on her door because her newspaper sat in the driveway for 20 minutes past 7 in the morning. The week before that, he'd complained that her porch light was too bright and might disturb neighbors, even though no one else had said anything about it. Jennifer tried her best to follow every rule, but it felt impossible. The HOA handbook was 80 pages long, and Robert seemed to have memorized every single line. She'd started having trouble sleeping, lying awake at night worrying about what he'd find wrong next. The situation took a darker turn on a Tuesday afternoon. Jennifer came home from school to find Robert's truck parked directly behind her driveway, blocking her from pulling in. She sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to stay calm. Maybe he was just visiting someone and would move soon. She waited 10 minutes, then 20. Finally, she got out and knocked on Robert's door. He took his time answering, and when he did, he had a satisfied smirk on his face. "Your car was parked in front of my house yesterday," he said before she could speak. "It blocked my view of the street. So now you know how it feels." "Robert, my car was legally parked on a public street. You're blocking my private driveway. I need to get my car into my garage." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you broke the neighborhood courtesy rules," he started, "to close the door." Jennifer's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She could feel her heart pounding, that old familiar feeling of controlled energy building up. But she took a deep breath and forced herself to relax. "Please move your truck. My daughter needs to be picked up from after-school care in 30 minutes. He finally moved it, but only after making her wait another 5 minutes while he looked for his keys. Jennifer drove away shaking with frustration and anger. This wasn't just about rules anymore. This was harassment. That weekend, Jennifer was planting flowers in her front garden when Robert appeared again. Lucy was riding her bike in circles on the driveway, her laughter filling the quiet morning air. Jennifer saw him coming and braced herself for whatever complaint he had this time. "Those flowers are the wrong color," Robert announced, pointing at the bright yellow marigolds Jennifer had just planted. "Only white, pink, or red flowers are permitted in front yards." Section 12, paragraph 4. Jennifer looked down at the flowers she'd spent an hour planting. Lucy had picked them out because they reminded her of sunshine. The rule actually says predominantly white, pink, or red. "I have roses along the fence that are red." "These are accent flowers," Robert's face reddened. "Don't try to lawyer the rules with me. I've been enforcing these guidelines since before you were born. I'm 35 years old, Robert, and I checked the handbook carefully before buying these." He stepped closer, invading her space in a way that made her uncomfortable. Jennifer stood her ground. Though every instinct from her old training told her to adjust her stance to prepare, she kept her hands relaxed at her sides even though they wanted to form into defensive positions. "You've been nothing but trouble since you moved here," Robert said, his voice low and threatening. "Maybe this neighborhood isn't the right fit for someone like you." "Someone like me?" Jennifer kept her voice steady, but inside she was screaming. Lucy had stopped riding her bike and was watching with wide, worried eyes. "Someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them." He turned and walked away, leaving Jennifer standing there, dirt on her knees and anger burning in her chest. That night, Lucy had nightmares. She'd been too young to understand most. The next incident happened at the monthly HOA meeting. Jennifer had avoided the previous 2 meetings, but Mrs. Patterson had encouraged her to come to this one. "There's going to be a vote on new playground equipment," she'd said. "We need all the parents there." Jennifer walked into the community center to find about 30 residents scattered around the room. Robert sat at the front table with 2 other board members, looking important and self-satisfied. When he saw Jennifer, his expression hardened. The meeting started normally enough. They discussed the budget, approved some landscaping plans, and debated the playground equipment. Jennifer voted in favor, along with most of the other parents. Then Robert stood up with a folder in his hands. "I'd like to address some ongoing compliance issues with one of our newer residents," he announced, and Jennifer's stomach dropped. He proceeded to list every single violation he'd documented over the past 2 months, making it sound like she was deliberately defying the HOA at every turn. He didn't use her name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. "This kind of behavior threatens our community standards and our property values," Robert concluded. "I propose we implement stricter enforcement measures, including faster escalation to fines." Jennifer felt 30 pairs of eyes turn to look at her. Her face burned with embarrassment and anger. She wanted to stand up and defend herself, to tell everyone how Robert had been targeting her, how he'd blocked her driveway and harassed her daughter. But her throat felt tight and she couldn't find the words. Mrs. Patterson spoke up instead. "Robert, don't you think you're being a bit harsh? She's new and still learning. The rules are the rules, Dorothy. They apply equally to everyone." But the way he said it, the way he looked at Jennifer, made it clear this wasn't about rules at all. Jennifer left the meeting early, her hands shaking. As she walked to her car, she caught her reflection in a window. For just a moment, she saw herself differently. Not as a scared single mom trying to keep the peace, but as the woman she used to be, the one who never backed down, the one who stood her ground. But that woman had made different choices. That woman hadn't had a 7-year-old daughter to protect. Jennifer got in her car and drove home, still trying to convince herself that staying quiet was the right choice. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while Jennifer was in the middle of teaching a math lesson. Her phone buzzed in her desk drawer, and normally she would have ignored it, but something made her glance at the screen. It was Lucy's school. Her heart jumped into her throat. "I need to take this," she told her co-teacher, stepping into the hallway. "Mrs. Chen?" "This is Principal Williams." "Lucy is fine, but she's quite upset. There was an incident with a neighbor and she's asking for you." Jennifer's hands went cold. "What kind of incident?" "What happened? Perhaps it's better if you come get her. She's safe, I promise. She's just very shaken up." Jennifer left school immediately, her mind racing through terrible possibilities. When she got to Lucy's school, she found her daughter sitting in the office with red, puffy eyes. The moment Lucy saw her, she burst into fresh tears and ran into her arms. "He yelled at me, Mom." Lucy sobbed into Jennifer's shoulder. "He was so mean." It took 20 minutes to get the full story. Lucy had been riding her bike home from the bus stop, something she did every day. She'd been on the sidewalk riding at a normal pace when Robert had stepped out of his house and started shouting at her. He told her she was going too fast, that she was being reckless, and that he was going to report her parents to the HOA. He'd said they'd have to move away if she didn't start following the rules. "He said you were a bad mom," Lucy whispered. "He said we don't belong here." Jennifer felt something crack inside her chest. She could handle Robert's harassment directed at her. She'd been swallowing her pride and her anger for months trying to keep the peace. But going after her daughter? That crossed a line she didn't even know she had. She drove Lucy home, made her favorite snack, and put on a movie to help her calm down. Then Jennifer walked out her front door and headed straight to Robert's house. Her footsteps were steady and purposeful. She wasn't shaking anymore. She felt eerily calm. Robert answered the door with that same smug expression he always wore. "If you're here to apologize for your daughter's behavior." "You yelled at my 7-year-old daughter," Jennifer said, her voice quiet but hard as steel. "A child. You made her cry and told her we don't belong in this neighborhood. She was riding recklessly. Someone needed to correct her since you clearly aren't doing your job as a parent. She's 7 years old, Robert. If you had a problem, you come to me. You never ever speak to my child like that again." Robert laughed, actually laughed. "Or what? You'll file a complaint? Go ahead. I have documentation of every violation your family has committed. The board will side with me, just like they always do." He moved forward then, stepping out onto his porch, getting into her space the way he'd done before, trying to intimidate her with his size, his presence, his anger. His hand came up, finger jabbing toward her face as he continued his rant about rules and standards and people who don't respect the community. Jennifer's body reacted before her mind fully registered it. Years of training, thousands of hours of practice, muscle memory that never really fades. When Robert's hand came too close, when he made a motion like he might push her, everything clicked into place. She didn't think. She just moved. Her hand came up in a smooth arc, redirecting his arm to the side. Her body shifted, weight transferring from one foot to the other in a movement so natural it felt like breathing. Robert suddenly found himself stumbling forward, completely off balance, his own momentum working against him. He crashed sideways into his doorframe with a loud thump, catching himself with both hands. The whole thing took maybe 2 seconds. Jennifer stood there, feet planted, hands relaxed at her sides, breathing normally. She hadn't struck him, hadn't hurt him. She'd simply moved, and his own aggression had done the rest. Robert stared at her with wide eyes, mouth open in shock. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely confused and maybe even a little scared. He'd been expecting her to back down like she always did. He'd been expecting her to apologize and retreat. Instead, he was the one off balance, both literally and figuratively. "My daughter," Jennifer said, her voice still quiet but carrying a weight it hadn't had before, "is off limits. You don't talk to her. You don't yell at her. You don't even look at her. If you have a problem with me, you come to me. But you leave my child alone. Are we clear?" Robert opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. You attacked me. I'm calling the police." "I didn't touch you, Robert. You stumbled. Maybe you should be more careful." Jennifer's eyes held his, and something in her gaze must have told him that she was done backing down, done being intimidated, done playing by his twisted version of the rules. "Stay away from my daughter." She turned and walked back to her house, her heart pounding now that the moment had passed. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline flooding her system. She hadn't used those skills in years. Hadn't wanted to. But standing up to Robert, protecting Lucy, it had felt right in a way that nothing else had for months. Inside her house, Lucy was still watching her movie, unaware of what had just happened. Jennifer sat down next to her and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Are we going to have to move?" Lucy asked quietly. "No, sweetheart. We're not going anywhere. This is our home." And for the first time since they'd moved in, Jennifer actually believed it. She wasn't going to let Robert Mitchell drive them away. She wasn't going to spend the rest of her life walking on eggshells and apologizing for existing. She'd tried it his way and it hadn't worked. Now they were going to try it her way. That night, Jennifer couldn't sleep. She lay in bed replaying the confrontation over and over. Part of her worried she'd made things worse. But a bigger part of her, a part she'd been ignoring for too long, felt something she hadn't felt in months. She felt strong. Word spread through the neighborhood faster than Jennifer expected. By Saturday morning, 3 different neighbors had stopped by under various pretenses. Mrs. Patterson brought over cookies. The young couple from down the street, Michael and Amy, asked to borrow a ladder they clearly didn't need. Even old Mr. Garcia from the corner house walked past with his dog twice in 1 hour, which was unusual since he normally only did one morning walk. They all wanted to know the same thing. What happened with Robert? Jennifer kept her answer simple. "We had a disagreement. I told him to leave my daughter alone. That's all." But she could see in their eyes that they'd heard more than that. Someone had seen something, or Robert had been talking, spreading his version of events. By Monday, she found out exactly what Robert had been saying. Mrs. Patterson called her that evening, her voice tight with worry. "Jennifer, dear, Robert's telling people you assaulted him. He's calling an emergency HOA meeting for Wednesday night. He wants you removed from the neighborhood." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "He's doing what?" "He's claiming you attacked him on his property. He says he has witnesses, though I can't imagine who. Most of us are just glad someone finally stood up to him." Mrs. Patterson paused. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but you should know what you're walking into. He's got documentation prep." Wednesday night came too quickly. Jennifer walked into the community center to find it more crowded than she'd ever seen it. At least 50 people were there, maybe more. She recognized most of them from around the neighborhood. But there were unfamiliar faces, too. Robert sat at the front table, looking confident and prepared. He had a thick folder in front of him and a laptop open. The board president, a tired-looking man named George, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address a complaint filed by Robert Mitchell regarding an incident that occurred last Thursday. Robert, you have the floor." What followed was 10 minutes of Robert painting Jennifer as a dangerous, unstable person who had violently attacked him without provocation. He showed photos of a bruise on his shoulder that he claimed came from her assault. He presented his documentation of all her supposed HOA violations.
He even had a written statement from someone.
Jennifer had never met claiming they'd witnessed her being aggressive and threatening. This woman has shown a pattern of disregard for our community standards, Robert concluded. And now she's escalated to physical violence. For the safety of our neighborhood, especially our children, I'm requesting the board vote to begin eviction proceedings. The room was silent. Jennifer felt dozens of eyes on her. Her face burned and her heart hammered in her chest. This was worse than she'd imagined. He was trying to destroy her, to take away her home, all because she'd finally stood up to him. George turned to her. Jennifer, would you like to respond to these allegations? She stood up, legs shaky, and walked to the front of the room. For a moment, she couldn't find words. Then she saw Mrs. Patterson in the third row, giving her an encouraging nod. She saw Michael and Amy holding hands, watching her with supportive expressions. She saw other faces, neighbors she'd smiled at but never really talked to, and most of them didn't look angry. They looked curious, maybe even hopeful. I didn't assault Robert, Jennifer said, her voice steadier than she felt. Last Thursday, he yelled at my 7-year-old daughter while she was riding her bike home from school. He made her cry. He told her we don't belong here. So yes, I went to his house to confront him about it, and yes, we had an argument on his porch. She pulled out her phone. I have a doorbell camera. I also checked with Lucy's school, and they documented the phone call I received about her being upset. I have the principal's statement here. She held up a printed email. Robert was aggressive during our conversation. When he made a sudden movement toward me, I stepped to the side. He lost his balance. That's all that happened. I never struck him. Robert stood up, his face red. She's lying. She attacked me. I've lived here for 15 years and You've never been held accountable, Mrs. Patterson interrupted, standing up. The room went quiet. Sweet, gentle Mrs. Patterson looked angrier than Jennifer had ever seen her. George, I'd like to speak if I may. George nodded, looking uncomfortable but curious. Robert has been bullying residents in this neighborhood for over a decade, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice shaking but determined. He harassed my husband so badly in our first year here that we almost sold our house. He's driven away at least 4 families that I know of. The Johnsons, the Lees, the Patels, and the Martinez family. All of them left because of him. Michael stood up next. He threatened to sue us over our fence being half an inch too tall. We had to hire a lawyer. Cost us $3,000 to defend ourselves over half an inch. Then Mr. Garcia stood. He reported me to animal control, claiming my dog was vicious. My dog is 12 years old and can barely walk upstairs. They investigated and found nothing, but it was humiliating. One by one, people started standing up and sharing their stories. The woman from the end of the street who'd been fined for having the wrong shade of shutters. The elderly man who'd been cited for his grass being a 1/4 inch too long while he was recovering from surgery. The single dad who'd been reported to child services because his kids played outside past 8 o'clock on a summer evening. Jennifer watched in amazement as neighbor after neighbor spoke up. These were people who'd been too afraid to challenge Robert before, too intimidated by his knowledge of the rules and his willingness to take people to court. But seeing someone finally stand up to him, seeing Jennifer refuse to back down, had given them courage too. Robert's face went from red to pale as the testimonies continued. He tried to interrupt several times, but George held up his hand. Let them speak, Robert. You've had your time. Finally, when the room went quiet again, George looked at his fellow board members. They huddled together, whispering. Then George cleared his throat. After hearing tonight's testimonies, the board has decided not only to dismiss Robert's complaint against Jennifer, but to issue a formal warning to Robert himself for harassment of multiple residents. If we receive any further complaints about his behavior, we'll be forced to take more serious action. The room erupted in applause. Robert gathered his papers, his hands shaking with rage, and stormed out of the community center without another word. Jennifer felt like she could breathe for the first time in months. Mrs. Patterson hugged her. Michael and Amy came over to shake her hand. Person after person thanked her for having the courage to stand up, for showing them that Robert could be challenged, that bullies only have power when everyone's too scared to speak up. As Jennifer drove home that night, Lucy asleep in the back seat after staying with a babysitter, she thought about courage and strength. Real strength wasn't about knowing how to fight. It was about knowing when to fight and what was worth fighting for. She'd spent months trying to keep the peace, trying to be small and quiet and invisible. But peace at the cost of dignity wasn't really peace at all. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was simply refuse to be pushed around anymore. The change in the neighborhood was almost immediate. The morning after the HOA meeting, Jennifer woke up to find fresh flowers on her doorstep with a note from Mrs. Patterson that simply said, "Thank you for being brave." By lunchtime, 3 more neighbors had stopped by to introduce themselves properly, not just with quick waves, but actual conversations. People she'd been living near for months suddenly wanted to know her, to talk to her, to be her friend. Robert's house remained dark and quiet. His truck sat in the driveway, but no one saw him outside. No violation notices appeared on anyone's doors. The neighborhood felt lighter somehow, like everyone had been holding their breath for years and could finally exhale. A week later, Mrs. Patterson knocked on Jennifer's door with an unusual request. "I know this might sound strange," she said, twisting her hands nervously. "But after what happened at the meeting, some of us were talking. We saw how calm you were when Robert got aggressive, how you handled yourself. And well, I did a little research online." Jennifer felt her stomach flip. "Research?" Mrs. Patterson pulled out her phone and showed Jennifer a screen. It was an old tournament photo from 8 years ago. Jennifer in her GI holding a trophy, her face younger and confident. The caption mentioned her 3rd-degree black belt and her championship title. "I hope you don't mind that I looked you up," Mrs. Patterson said quickly. "But it made me think. There are a lot of us in this neighborhood, especially women and older folks who felt intimidated and helpless for so long. Not just with Robert, but in general. Would you ever consider teaching a self-defense class? Just basic things, you know. How to feel safer, more confident." Jennifer stared at the photo. She'd put that part of her life away so completely that seeing it felt like looking at a stranger. "I don't know. I haven't trained anyone in years. I'm not even sure I remember how to teach." "You don't have to decide now," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Just think about it. We could use the community center. I already asked George, and he said it would be fine." That night, Jennifer pulled out the boxes she'd packed away when Lucy was born. Her gi was still there, folded neatly along with her worn black belt and her old training notes. She ran her fingers over the fabric, remembering the person she used to be. Strong, confident, unafraid. When had she lost that? When had she decided that being a good mom meant making herself small? Lucy appeared in the doorway, curious. "What's that, Mom?" "Something I used to do a long time ago," Jennifer said. "Before you were born, I used to teach people how to protect themselves. Like a superhero." Lucy's eyes went wide. Jennifer laughed. "Not exactly. More like teaching people to be strong and brave when they need to be. Like how you stood up to the mean man." Lucy came closer, touching the black belt with reverence. "Can you teach me?" Looking at her daughter's eager face, Jennifer made a decision. "Yes, I can teach you. And maybe some other people too." The first class had 12 people. Mrs. Patterson, Michael and Amy, Mr. Garcia's daughter who lived with him, and several others Jennifer was just getting to know. They met in the community center on a Saturday morning, and Jennifer felt nervous in a way she hadn't expected. What if she'd forgotten everything? What if she couldn't explain things properly anymore? But the moment she stepped onto the mat, something clicked back into place. Her body remembered even if her mind had doubts. She started with basics. How to stand with confidence. How to be aware of your surroundings. Simple moves to create distance if someone got too close. Nothing fancy or aggressive, just practical skills that could make someone feel less helpless. "It's not about being able to fight," Jennifer told the class. "It's about knowing you have options. About not freezing when you're scared. Sometimes just standing your ground and looking confident is enough to make someone back off." The class met every Saturday morning, and word spread. More people joined. Lucy came too, practicing alongside the adults with serious concentration. Jennifer found herself looking forward to it, rediscovering a part of herself she'd thought was gone forever. She wasn't the same person she'd been before. She was better. She had perspective now, understanding that real strength wasn't about domination or intimidation. It was about protecting what mattered, standing up for yourself and others, knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Robert's house went on the market in May, about 2 months after the meeting. Jennifer saw the sign go up and felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, definitely, but also something like sadness. Not for Robert exactly, but for all the time and energy that had been wasted on conflict and fear. "Good riddance," Mrs. Patterson said when she saw the sign, "though I suspect wherever he goes next he'll find some other neighborhood to terrorize." "Maybe," Jennifer said. "Or maybe someone there will stand up to him too. Maybe he'll finally learn that being mean doesn't make you powerful." The day Robert moved out, Jennifer was teaching her class. She saw the moving truck through the community center windows but didn't stop the lesson. She was helping a grandmother learn how to break free from a wrist grab, showing her that even someone small could create leverage and escape. The woman's face lit up when she successfully completed the technique. "I did it," she exclaimed, laughing with surprise and pride. "I actually did it." That smile, that moment of empowerment, was worth more than any satisfaction Jennifer might have gotten from watching Robert leave. Summer came, and the neighborhood transformed. People sat outside on their porches without worry. Kids played freely in their yards. The garden club Mrs. Patterson started didn't stress about exact color requirements. The community center hosted movie nights and potlucks. It felt like a real neighborhood now, not just a collection of houses ruled by fear. On a warm evening in July, almost a year after Jennifer had moved in, the neighbors threw a block party. Someone had the idea to make it an anniversary celebration for Jennifer and Lucy, though really it was a celebration of everything that had changed. There was music, food from a dozen different families, and kids running everywhere with sticky fingers and huge smiles. Lucy rode her bike in circles, faster than she probably should, and no one said a word. She was just a kid being a kid the way it should be. Mrs. Patterson found Jennifer near the dessert table. "You know," she said, "I've lived here 12 years, and this is the first time this neighborhood has actually felt like a community." "You did that?" Jennifer shook her head. "We all did it. I just went first. That's what courage is," Mrs. Patterson said, squeezing her hand. "Going first when everyone else is too scared. Showing people it's possible to stand up, to fight back against bullies, to not let fear control their lives." Jennifer watched Lucy playing with a group of kids, her laughter carrying across the street. She thought about the scared, exhausted woman who'd moved here a year ago, so desperate for peace that she'd been willing to make herself invisible. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, not because she could break boards or win tournaments, but because she knew what was worth fighting for and had the courage to do it. "Mom," Lucy called out, waving her over. "Come dance with us!" Jennifer walked over to her daughter, to her neighbors who'd become friends, to this community they'd all built together. The music was too loud, the food was running out, and someone's dog had gotten into the cake. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely wonderful. She'd finally found her home. Not because it was perfect, but because she'd been brave enough to fight for it.